Alright, hello folks and welcome back to my channel. Kujiro here, coming to you with my first vlog video from the rough, bleak and grey streets of Eastern Europe, which surprisingly look exactly like what Americans and their directors represent in the American movies when they think about how Russia looks like. But it's not only Russia, it is the whole region. Okay, so guys, in today's video I'd like to do a response to the topic of Tekken and how Tekken is or isn't representative of martial arts in video games. More specifically, has the development and popularity of Tekken as a series came from martial arts or just from the fact that it's a 3D fighting game, which honestly I think it's a mix of both. This is a video response to the recent topics and streams that Mike Hollow made on his YouTube channel, from which I think people look at the topic from a little bit of a, how should I say, a perspective that I don't think is the main point and that important. I like Mike Hollow, I don't always agree with him, but I hope this video response will bring another flair and tapestry to this discussion, which I actually think is important, especially now when Clive came to Tekken 8. So in short, Tekken as a series so far has definitely became popular because of the representative of its martial arts characters, and more specifically the fact that we are at Tekken 8 now. That of course doesn't mean that it had only had 8 games so far, but in every iteration of the series there were new characters introduced which are representatives of traditional and very iconic martial arts. And yes, that also goes for the controversial, from that point of view specifically, game Tekken 7, which some people point out to say that it's the biggest departure from the traditional form of martial arts characters in Tekken, which is only half true. Okay, but I don't know why when I saw Mike Hollow had this discussion, they start with Tekken 1. Guys, nobody actually remembers Tekken 1, and if anybody says to you that they have proactively played Tekken 1, or that in the 90s that had any idea what Tekken is as a video game, they're just lying to you, or they speak about Tekken 1 as if they remember anything from the game. They just probably have saw something recently, are trying to reminisce and make a point which is not important in this discussion, because Tekken 1 was not really an important game. It's like Street Fighter 1. It was just the start of the series. The leap between Tekken 1 and Tekken 2 is, I would say, enormous, right? But Tekken 1 is just a very basic fighting game. It's not, like, you can say that there are characters with martial arts there, but it's not like it's not in that direction at all, in my opinion. I vaguely remember what it had, but it doesn't have anything close to what Tekken 2 had subsequently. And you have to remember that when Tekken 2 was introduced, there were a lot of new characters compared to Tekken 1. There was, of course, one of the most iconic fighting game characters of all time, Lei Wulong, who is probably one of the most complex characters in a fighting game ever. He's definitely, in terms of knowledge that you need to have, he's probably number one in terms of complexity of execution. He's not as complex as Nine the Phantom in Blast Bull, or as kind of like rapid reaction requirements like Asuka in Guilty Gear Strive. But Lei is a very complex character nowadays. In Tekken 2 he was not that complex, he didn't have the 5 animal styles, but he still represented a very cool new martial art, together of course with Baek, the Taekwondo, the first Taekwondo representative. Of course we had Lee Chaolang, we had other Jack characters, we had Armor King, we had Anna Williams, of course June, and yes, we had Devil and Angel, which shot lasers, but they are not like, just like Mike said in his videos, like shooting lasers is more kind of like a gimmick than anything else. It's not meant to be used as a kind of like a primary technique of attack. But that's not like when Tekken 2 was played by people. First of all, not the whole lot of people knew how to play the game. When I first saw Tekken 2, which was a long time ago, I thought that 10-hit combos was the best way to play the game, because my point of reference was Ultimate MK3. But still, compared, if you compare Tekken 1 to Tekken 2 is a very good video game with a lot of characters representing actual martial arts, right? Now, when we go to Tekken 3, guys, we're in year of our Lord 1997, okay? 1997 is a very important year for the development of PlayStation. We had Tekken 3, we had Final Fantasy 7, and of course Castlevania Symphony of the Night. 3 games which are one of the most iconic video games of all time, which helped bring PlayStation to the glory it is today. It was the first big steps in 1997, and Tekken 3 specifically was a big part of that. Guys, the jump between Tekken 2 and Tekken 3 is really big, okay? When you look at Lei in Tekken 3, I wouldn't say he's a completely different character, but he's so improved compared to what he looked like in Tekken 2. We of course also had Lin Xiaoyu. We had Jin as a representative of the Mishima styles. And of course Eddie Gordo, the first capoeira representative. So if you think about how good of a game Tekken 3 is for its time, how improved it was compared to Tekken 2, you have to acknowledge, this is not my point of view, okay? This is just a fact that in every new title in the series, we have new characters, and these new characters represent some form of traditional or iconic or emblematic martial arts, okay? This is how the series became popular. The series didn't become popular initially and would not have existed up until this day if there was no introduction of these iconic characters in the early history of the game. And Lei, together with Eddie Gordo, you may like him or not like him, that's not the point, together with Huarang, together with Lin Xiaoyu, Anna, how different and how more improved King was in Tekken 3. All of these improvements and new characters made the game more popular, and that happened through the vehicle of traditional martial arts represented in video games. Then of course we had Tekken Tag Tournament 1, in which a lot of the characters that were not in Tekken 3 came back. Again, everything is improved. Bruce is much improved, Baek is improved a lot compared to Tekken 2. Lays even more interesting. Of course, we had the return of Kunimitsu. Like Kunimitsu in Tekken 2, yes, you can say that her style is kind of like similar to Yoshimitsu because she has unblockable attacks with her short Tanken or Kunai or whatever it was, I don't remember, but Kunimitsu was not that good neither in Tekken 2 nor in Tekken Tag Tournament 1. Actually, I would venture to say that in Tekken Tag Tournament 1, she's probably one of the weakest characters in the game. Very short range, very high skill ceiling, I would say. But again, the characters, both her and Yoshimitsu, in my opinion, represent some kind of like a fantasy stereotype of what a cybernetic ninja would fight like, but they still fight in a close quarter distance, guys. I wouldn't say that Unknown, of course, is representative of any traditional martial arts. She's like the only, technically speaking, new character in Tekken Tag Tournament 1. I'm gonna make a side note here that I think that Unknown, when I saw Zwei in Soul Calibur 5, he's from the Soul Calibur series, very iconic character. He reminds me of Unknown a lot, I don't know for what reason, but he's pretty cool. However, in Tekken Tag Tournament 1, we had the actual first real case of non-traditional character having tools and instruments to fight, not like a traditional Tekken character with martial arts and hits up close, but with kind of like more ranged attacks. We had the first kind of like a semi-zoner in Tekken Tag Tournament 1, and that is of course True Ogre. The normal ogre is the green one, and True Ogre is the one with the horns and the long snake arms. Now, if you think or if you hear somebody says that he's a boss character, he's not counted as a normal character in the game, that's not true. Okay, for Tekken Tag Tournament 1 specifically, he's absolutely a tournament character, and he's not only a tournament character, but he's one of the best characters in the game. If you want to see the highest level of Tekken Tag Tournament 1 possible, please find on YouTube the show match between Ryan Hart from the UK. I don't think a lot of people do not know who this person is, who plays Mishimas, and a person from Korea named Kim Bo-min, who plays double ogres. He plays the green and the horned ogres as a tag team, right? And I haven't watched it in a very long time, but I remember what True Ogre fought like, and what it was like when you fight against him. He has a lot of range. He has a lot of range on his wipe the floor attacks with while crouching down forward 2, which is an attack that normal ogre has as well, but he attacks with the snake arm and he has a lot more range. He has a lot of range on his standing right hand, and the important point in the context of this conversation is the fact that he can shoot fire, but he has, unlike the devil and angel, right, who can just shoot a laser in straight direction, which can be ducked and sidestepped. True Ogre can shoot a horizontal fire attack, which covers a lot of range, isn't blockable. You can duck it, of course, but in Tekken Tag Tournament 1, as you know, there is a tag system, and you can tag in with when you do a roll, tag in with your other character in order to not die. He can just do the horizontal fire, and your second character is gonna get hit coming in. Like I said, this attack isn't blockable. It's not a traditional martial arts attack. I don't think this needs to be clarified further. But it also cannot really be sidestepped because he starts blowing fire from his mouth, and he like turns his neck around and he fires in all directions. It's not as far hitting as the lasers in or like Noctis spear or broadswords or you know, any of the like the shooting from Victor or the chains from Devil Jin or anything like that, but for the time it was probably one of the first instances in which one of the strongest characters in the game was kind of like a non-traditional, non-martial arts related character. That was in Tekken Tag Tournament 1. Nevertheless, the game was very popular. It is true that when the game moved from Tag 1 to Tekken 4, a lot of people dropped the game, especially in the Asian countries. A lot of characters were missing from Tag to Tekken 4. It was the first time, as you know, that walls were introduced, staged, kind of like uneven terrain on certain stages was introduced as a concept. We of course had kind of like a low ceiling on the airport level, if you remember. But we also had one of the most important things that I'm talking about in this video, which I want you to understand and really realize for yourself if you want to fact check to what I'm saying, is that the new characters that were introduced in that game were, again, they were not like a fantasy or shonen style anime characters. They were traditional martial arts fighting characters. They were of course Steve, who is a boxer. He's not a fantasy shonen boxer like Sanada Akihiko in Persona 3, for example. Just look at how he fights in the Persona fighting games. Sanada Akihiko, who is a boxer, but he's kind of like a fantasy boxer. He has a lot of high-range attack. He's not a traditional boxer. Steve is a traditional boxer. He represents the boxing as a martial art in Tekken, and he was introduced in Tekken 4 together with the first mixed martial arts kind of like cage fighter in the face of Marduk. The only thing the 3D games had at that time that was similar to Marduk in Tekken was probably Vanessa in Virtua Fighter. Vanessa is awesome. She's a very cool character. But I believe she was introduced in Virtua Fighter a little bit later. She came with VF4 Evo together with Go and Brat, if I remember. I'm not 100% sure, but her fighting style is similar to Marduk. But Marduk was, again, a martial arts representative who came in Tekken 4. He was not very good. He had a big body, very comboable across the stages. But he's still pretty cool. And he represents traditional kind of like emblematic martial arts, right? Then of course we had Tekken 5, which I don't like. If you remember that game, you have to know that, again, the most iconic new characters represented that game, which helped bring the game to more people and the series becoming even more popular. Again, for the fourth time, again, these are traditional martial arts characters. This is Fenway, Shaolin Tsuyan together with Tai Chi. I don't think he has a lot of Tai Chi in his movements, except for the back forward one, the Danbian attack, which is exists in all forms of Tai Chi. In the Wu style, the Chen style, the Yan style, and everything in between. The Danbian is an emblematic attack in the real Tai Chi. But Fenway only has that one from Tai Chi, but he's like, you cannot say that he does not represent traditional martial arts. That argument is absolutely ridiculous, shouldn't be taken seriously. If you want to parallel with another 3D fighting game, you have to look no further than Lei Fei in Virtual Fighter, of course. But Feng Wei is kind of like, in my opinion, a little bit cooler, although Lei Fei is very cool as well. We had, of course, Raven, a different ninja compared to Yoshimitsu. Again, fights with a very kind of like a fantasy idea of what a ninja martial arts look like. A lot of velocity attacks, a lot of jumps, a lot of maneuvers across the screen, back turn positions, a lot of other cool things. And again, we to represent the Kazama style martial arts from June, we had Asuka. Very improved from June, from both Tekken 2 and Tekken Tag 1. Okay. Then of course we had Dark Resurrection, which again keeping up with the tradition of Tekken, developing even further and making it even more popular with again new martial arts based characters. They are, of course, Dragunov and Lily both came in Tekken Dark Resurrection. This is also the first time in the series where net play was introduced for if you had the special add-on for PS3. The netcode was terrible. It was not better in Tekken 6, unfortunately, which is around the time where I start dropping the game little by little. But the main point is that in Dark Resurrection, then like I said in Tekken 5, the new characters are close quarter martial artists. You can say that Lily is kind of like this ballerina style, which is not traditional martial arts. Fair point, but she still has to fight with punches and kicks and somewhat in close quarters, right? One of her iconic attacks come from a back turn position, which is a position that Lin Xiaoyu has, Lei has, and of course Raven has as well. So you can say that she fights a lot like the other martial artists in the game. Tekken 6, here we have a drop that's undeniable in terms of introduction of new martial arts. We had Bob, which is just kind of like amalgamation of moves from different characters. You can't say that he's representing specific traditional martial arts. Same for Miguel. Leo is Bajikwan. Very cool character, right? Leo is awesome. But of course with Lars and Alisa we have a lot of non-traditional martial artists. That's just a fact, but you always have to remember that in between all of these games a lot of the other already established characters were improved a lot with multi-throws, with different techniques, with different attacks, with different lows, with different punches and kicks. So it is a fact that the falling off of traditional martial arts started with Tekken 6. Tekken Revolution introduced Eliza, which I don't need to explain why she's not a traditional martial artist. She's a pretty cool character, in my opinion, but like people do not pick her for her punches and kicks. That much is obvious. Which is going to bring us to Tekken 7 before I close up this video. Yes guys, you can say that the guest characters in Tekken 7 were ridiculous. Were a little bit with the gauges and with the way Akuma... I think a lot of the reputation of the game was destroyed by Akuma single-handedly. And of course by the people that were carried by this character. I don't use this expression everything for every single character and for every single accomplished player, but there were a lot of players that were carried by Akuma. Definitely Akuma was by far the strongest character in Tekken 7 for the longest period of time, right? But you can also say that we had Josie, right? instead of Bruce. She fights a lot like Bruce. She has his iconic low kicks. She's still a pretty cool character. Yes, we had Negan, which was the biggest coming out of left field guest character. Noctis, here I want to mention very quickly a couple of things, because people compare Noctis to Clive in Tekken 8. Guys, Tekken 7 came out in 2017. Noctis' guest character came in 2018. In 2018, both Final Fantasy as a series and Final Fantasy 15 as a game in the series had way better reputation than overall the Final Fantasy series now, and Final Fantasy 16 compared to what 15 was close to a decade ago. Okay. Final Fantasy 15 had a lot of cool additional DLC content and had a lot of cool other things in it. Like, I don't know if anybody remembers, but it had a Assassin's Creed mini game for limited time in one of the cities, in which you could play like with Noctis, like in kind of like an assassin styled game. It was pretty cool. Yes, a lot of people didn't care about Noctis, but also a lot of people didn't play him, and he didn't leave a big mark on the game. But I don't think he was particularly hated, and I don't think at the time there were a lot of people who were asking for a different Final Fantasy character, like people are asking for Tifa now instead of Clive. The problem with Clive, moving on to Tekken 8 now, the big problem with Clive is not that he fights with swords and summons and stuff like that. Final Fantasy 16, for the record, is a very cool game, and I like Clive in there. Just like Mike, I haven't finished the game yet, because I dropped it to finish and to play Final Fantasy Stranger of Paradise more, which is one of the most underrated video games for the past 5 years, I would say. Mainly because it was neglected to the close release date to Elden Ring. And that's neither here nor there, but my point is that Clive will never be more, in terms of his image and the way people look at him, he will never be more than the Final Fantasy 16 protagonists. The point of introducing guest characters in these games is not specifically to bring a new fighting style or anything like that. That I understand the misgivings that people have in this field, but that's not really the main point. The main point is that the guest character is supposed to bring new people to the game, either from the people who want to play Tekken and are not interested in JRPGs, or people who play JRPGs and want to try something different because they have their cool representative character in a fighting game. But Clive doesn't have this multicultural, cross-cultural appeal, because you have to understand that when it comes to Final Fantasy series, there are characters that have transitioned Final Fantasy as a franchise, right? We had Cloud, we have, of course, Tifa, Ares, I'm gonna say, of course, Sephiroth, Vincent, even Lightning, who is in 3 Final Fantasy games. A lot of you can say even something like Zack is a very like transitioned Final Fantasy series. So in my opinion, the best option would have been to add something like that to the game. Characters like this, who is kind of like makes people happy, makes people smile, makes people want to play the game, and will make waves in communities beyond just Tekken and Final Fantasy as communities. Tifa can do that. Yes, Tifa is popular for all the wrong reasons. I don't think I need to clarify and explain why that is. But she, without a doubt, will be more fitting as a fighting style, as a like brawler, martial artist. Something. It could have been something like similar to what Ted is in Street Fighter 6. But that's obviously not the case. She's not in the game. Clive is in the game, and Clive will never, I mean never, be anything more than the Final Fantasy 16 protagonist. Okay, he's not going to bring new people to the game. I think he's very well made into the game. He does not represent any martial arts or even fantasy martial arts, as it was stated in the developer interview from the Square and Tekken teams, right? But years from now, in the history of Final Fantasy, my guess is that Clive will be remembered much in the same way that Van is remembered in Final Fantasy XII, which is to say that he's just the main character of X game in Final Fantasy, then people just move on, okay? So, that is my opinion of Clive. I see it as a missed opportunity. That's my personal opinion. I don't speak on behalf of anybody else. Yes, I work in the video game industry. I'm not gonna say what I do, but that's my honest opinion on Clive as a guest character, and of course about Tekken as a series. And I'm gonna close the video by going back to Tekken 7, because a lot of people are missing the very important point of the history of this game. Yes, we had a lot of guest characters that were not traditional martial artists. I was going to say that Geese is probably the closest to a traditional martial artist in the game. Geese is a super cool character. I don't think anybody dislikes Geese as a character anywhere. He's awesome. But also, Lydia and Fakumran were both introduced specifically in Tekken 7, and in Tekken 8 Lydia is a star character. I think she's pretty cool. In my opinion, she's a little bit stylistically too close to Jeanne in Virtua Fighter, but she is still a pretty cool fighting game character, a representative of traditional martial arts, of course. Fakumran, I don't need to explain what he represents and how he fights and stuff like that. But whenever we are talking about the departure of Tekken series from martial arts and its footprint as a fighting game with martial arts, we also need to mention when we talk trash about Tekken 7 that Lydia and Fakumram were introduced there, and my personal prediction is, without knowing any information or anything like that, that there will be at least one or two new traditional martial arts representatives in Tekken 8 before it's all said and done. My personal hope is that Lei is introduced in the game sooner rather than later. I don't like the fact that one of the most complicated and iconic fighting game characters of all time always stays as a DLC in the past two games. But it is undoubtedly a fact that the Tekken series have developed so far and holds 80% of its popularity, especially in the early days, to the representation of new characters which represented not fantasy fighting styles, not anime shonen fighting styles, but traditional martial arts. That is a fact that cannot be denied. And I think this is something that needs to be mentioned every time people talk on this subject. Of course, this doesn't mean that people should not play whichever characters they want. But I think the best way to combat the feeling of frustration when you see a character like Clive that you do not like for one reason or another is to learn how to fight against him and be the people who play him and make them feel bad because you are that's your own personal rebellion within the game, right? You don't have to play a character, you don't have to encourage other people to play the character, but in order for this full departure to happen, like I think Mike Hollow was a little bit exaggerating about, there needs to be like not only introduction of at least 10 new characters like Clive, but also the complete modification of all the other characters to have tools like Nina, who is able to shoot guns in this game, which is, I mean, yes, it is a departure of her fighting style, but not to a very big extent. I don't think this will ever happen with Tekken. And I would like to close the video with that argument. Yes, Tekken is a game that represented martial arts for a very big portion of its history, and it still, for the most part, represents martial arts. The hit system notwithstanding. But if you want to play martial arts characters, you have a lot of choices in that regard. The only frustrating thing is that one of the most iconic characters are always kept as DLCs. And if you're somebody who plays any of these characters, you basically play these games from the position of half their lifespan. Okay, if you want to play, if you are a fan of Kunimitsu, for example, you played Kunimitsu in Tekken 7 way less than people who, like Paul, played Tekken 7. I mean, just something to think about. Okay, with this, I'm gonna close the video. Thank you for watching. Shoutouts to Mike Hollow, and I hope he can listen to these arguments and add or something to them. Either agreeing or disagreeing, doesn't matter. And you can share what you think down in the comment section below, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.